The day had started like any other. The sun was just beginning to cast its soft golden light over the city, glinting off glass towers and busy streets. Inside the mansion on the hill, everything looked as it usually did, perfectly organized, quietly maintained, and polished until it gleamed. The billionaire, a man used to the rhythm of boardrooms, meetings, and endless phone calls, was driving home earlier than usual, a rare thing that almost never happened. The city outside seemed alive and bustling, but inside, his mind was only on the thought of returning home, surprising everyone, and enjoying a few quiet hours before the evening unfolded. He parked his sleek car in the driveway, noting how the gardens were immaculate, the flowers in perfect bloom, and the water fountain in the courtyard sparkling under the morning sun. Everything was in its place, as if the house itself was aware of the man who had built it and now walked through its halls. The doors opened quietly with a touch of a hidden button on his key fob, and the familiar scent of polished wood and fresh flowers welcomed him. Yet something about the silence felt different that morning. It wasn't empty. It was calm, almost too calm, and it stirred a small curiosity in him. Walking into the grand hall, he noticed the usual morning bustle was absent. There were no soft footsteps of the staff moving from room to room, no gentle laughter, no clinking of cups from the kitchen. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner. It was strange, but he thought perhaps everyone was busy preparing for the day ahead. Still, he could not shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something unusual in a house so predictable. He wandered further into the mansion, his polished shoes making soft echoes on the marble floor. His eyes scanned familiar spaces. The living room with its high ceilings and luxurious furniture, the library lined with countless books he had rarely had time to read, and the dining hall where silver cutlery always lay waiting for meals he often skipped. Everything was perfect, but it felt oddly empty. He felt the subtle pull of curiosity stronger, a little tug in his chest that told him to explore more, to see what was going on. It was then that he heard it. A soft sound, delicate and unusual, floating through the quiet halls. It wasn't a footstep, nor a whisper, nor a creak of the house settling. It was the faintest melody, almost like a dream. He paused, his heart quickening with interest. His eyes scanned the corridors, searching for the source of the sound, moving instinctively toward it. It was beautiful, almost fragile, like something being played with care and emotion. The sound pulled him further into the mansion, deeper than he had ever wandered when alone. The melody led him to the grand piano room, a space he had always walked past without a second thought. The door was slightly open, and through the gap he could see a figure seated at the piano. It was the maid, someone he had always known to be quiet, diligent, and unseen in the background of his life. But what she was doing now made him stop in his tracks. Her fingers moved gracefully over the keys, producing music that filled the entire room with warmth and depth. Each note seemed to carry a story, a feeling, something that went beyond the surface of everyday life. He could not believe what he was hearing. She did not notice him at first. She was completely absorbed, her eyes on the keys, her body gently swaying with the rhythm. The music was soft, intimate, and yet powerful, as though it had been waiting for someone to hear it. The billionaire stood frozen in the doorway, unsure whether to interrupt or simply listen. Every note she played seemed to touch something deep within him, stirring memories of his own childhood when music had been a part of his life before the business world had taken over. It was a feeling he had not experienced in years, a mix of nostalgia, surprise, and awe. He took a careful step forward, trying to stay unnoticed, though the sound seemed to reach every corner of the mansion. The piano, a grand and expensive piece, had always been part of the house's decoration, something he never thought to use. Yet now it was alive, singing under her hands. He watched as her fingers danced across the keys, each movement precise, delicate, yet full of passion. He realized he had never truly seen her before, had never noticed how someone so quiet in daily life could carry such a depth of talent. Time seemed to slow as he stood there listening. The melody shifted from gentle notes to something more complex, more moving, as if telling a story only she knew. He felt an unexpected emotion, a mix of pride, wonder, and admiration. It was a revelation, a moment that made him pause and reflect. In all the years of running his life and empire, he had never encountered such an authentic display of talent, of emotion, expressed so freely. The house, usually so still and ordered, now seemed to breathe with the music, responding to each note, each chord. Finally, the piece came to a soft ending, the last note lingering in the air like a sigh. She sat there for a moment, her hands poised above the keys as if unsure what to do next. Only then did she notice him. She turned, startled, her eyes wide in surprise. The billionaire, for the first time in years, smiled. Not a formal smile, not a polite one, but a genuine smile. The kind that comes when someone sees something beautiful that takes them completely by surprise. "Why didn't I know you could play like this?" he asked softly, careful not to startle her further. His voice, usually commanding, was gentle now, filled with curiosity and amazement. She blinked, unsure how to respond. I didn't think it mattered," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, as if admitting something she had kept hidden. She had worked in the house for years, blending into the background, performing her duties without drawing attention. But here at the piano, she had found a way to express herself, a part of her that had never been acknowledged. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "It matters," he said simply. "It matters a lot. I can't believe I never noticed." There was a moment of silence heavy with unspoken words. She looked back at the piano, unsure if she should continue, but he nodded encouragingly. Slowly, almost timidly, she returned her hands to the keys. The music began again, softer this time, as if testing the waters. And he listened, fully present, not thinking about emails, meetings, or decisions. For the first time in a long while, he was completely absorbed in something pure and real. As the notes filled the room, he felt a connection, not just to the music, but to the person creating it. The maid, quiet and diligent, had opened a window to something he had almost forgotten existed: beauty, talent, and the power of human expression. He realized how often life passed by unnoticed, how many hidden stories and skills went unseen, buried under the routine of daily living. By the time she finished, he was almost reluctant to break the silence. But he had to speak, had to acknowledge the moment. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You have a gift, something extraordinary. I wish I had known sooner." She smiled faintly, a mix of pride and disbelief. "Thank you," she whispered, not fully realizing that this simple acknowledgement meant more than any praise she had ever received. For the billionaire, it was a moment that would stay with him. He realized that life was not just about wealth, power, or schedules. It was about noticing, appreciating, and nurturing the hidden beauty in the world, in people, in moments, and in unexpected places. And in that quiet morning in the grand piano room of his mansion, he had found something rare and unforgettable. The house no longer felt empty. It felt alive, full of possibility and wonder, and as he watched her fingers move over the keys, he knew this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. The mansion felt different after that morning. The billionaire, still thinking about the music, walked through the hall slowly, each step echoing softly against the polished floors. The house, always quiet, now seemed to hum with the memory of the melody he had just heard. Even the sunlight streaming through the tall windows seemed warmer, as if the house itself had noticed something new. He paused for a moment, glancing back at the piano room, half expecting to see her still there, hands hovering over the keys, but the room was empty. She had left as quietly as she had arrived, leaving behind only the echo of her music. He moved into the living room, his mind replaying the performance. He remembered the delicate movements of her fingers, the way she had seemed lost in the music, and the sudden awareness that he had never really seen her before. She had always been a quiet presence in the house, almost invisible. Yet here was a side of her that was extraordinary. He felt a mix of curiosity and admiration. How could someone so talented remain unnoticed for so long? His thoughts were interrupted by the soft clatter of dishes from the kitchen. The sound reminded him that life in the house went on, even if the morning had felt like a dream. He made his way there, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but the kitchen was empty. The breakfast area was neatly arranged, the table set as if no one had touched it, and the coffee was still warm. He poured himself a cup and sat down, letting the warmth of the drink match the warmth he felt from the memory of the music. He realized that he had spent so much time focused on work and wealth that he had forgotten to notice the people around him. The staff were always there, keeping everything in order, yet he had never taken the time to see them truly. The maid, in particular, had always seemed to blend into the background, performing her duties without complaint, without drawing attention. But this morning had changed everything. She had shown him something remarkable, something that went beyond the ordinary routines of life. He found himself walking back toward the piano room, almost unconsciously. The door was slightly ajar as it had been before. He peeked inside and smiled to himself, half expecting to see the piano empty again, the room silent. But this time, he imagined the music continuing, each note a reminder of the hidden talent he had discovered. The thought of her playing again filled him with a strange excitement, a desire to witness more of what he had missed. Hours passed, yet he could not stop thinking about her. He found himself wandering the mansion, imagining her presence in each room, her music filling the spaces. He realized that the house, despite its luxury and perfection, had always felt like a shell, a place maintained for appearances rather than for living. But now, with the memory of her music, it felt alive, full of possibilities and unexpectedly human. As the afternoon approached, he decided to search for her. He wanted to understand more about the person behind the music. He walked through the halls, checking the rooms she might have been in. He found traces of her presence: a neatly folded towel, a small stack of freshly laundered clothes, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. Each small detail made him think more about her life and the skills she had kept hidden. Eventually, he found her in a small sitting area near the garden. She was arranging flowers in a vase, her movements careful and precise. She looked up when she heard him, surprised to see him there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He observed her quietly, noticing the simplicity of her clothes, the gentle strength in her posture, and the calm focus in her eyes. She seemed unaware of the impact she had had on him, as if her music was simply part of her life, not meant for admiration. "I wanted to see you," he said finally, his voice soft but steady. "I wanted to understand more about the person behind the music." She looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and hesitation. "There's not much to understand," she said quietly. "I just play when I can. It helps me forget everything else." He nodded slowly. "It's more than that. What you do is extraordinary. I've never heard anything like it." Her cheeks flushed slightly, a mix of embarrassment and pride. She did not know how to respond to such direct praise. In her world, she was accustomed to being seen but not noticed, to performing duties quietly and without comment. Yet here was someone important, recognizing something she had hidden all her life. The billionaire sat down beside her, trying to make the moment less formal and more personal. "Tell me," he said, leaning forward slightly. "When did you start playing?" She hesitated, then replied softly, "I learned when I was very young. My parents couldn't afford lessons, but I practiced on a small keyboard at home. When I moved here, I didn't think anyone would care." He listened intently, fascinated by her story. Each word painted a picture of dedication and resilience, of a talent nurtured in secrecy. He realized that people often carry remarkable abilities that remain unseen, simply because no one notices or encourages them. This thought made him reflect on his own life, on the countless moments he had missed, too absorbed in his world to pay attention to the human stories unfolding around him. They spoke for hours, sharing pieces of their lives that had never crossed paths before. He learned about her dreams, small hopes she had kept hidden, and the quiet strength that had carried her through life. She discovered a side of him that few people ever saw: the man behind the fortune, the loneliness that often accompanied success, and the longing for something real, something beyond material wealth. By the time the sun began to set, the room was filled not with music, but with a quiet understanding, a connection that neither had anticipated. The mansion, which had always seemed like a stage for appearances, now felt like a place where real human experiences could unfold. He realized that the day had changed him, that the discovery of her talent had opened his eyes to a world he had ignored for too long. As evening approached, he invited her to play the piano again. This time it was not just a private moment for him, but a shared experience. He sat nearby, listening closely, his presence supportive and encouraging. She began to play, and the room filled with music once more. The melody was different now, softer, more intimate, reflecting the conversation they had shared and the understanding that had grown between them. He noticed every detail: the way her fingers moved over the keys, the subtle expressions on her face, the passion in her eyes. Each note seemed to tell a story not just of skill, but of life lived quietly with courage and hope. He realized that this was more than music. It was a glimpse into her soul, and he felt privileged to witness it. Hours passed as they remained in the room together, the music flowing freely. It was a rare moment of connection, one that bridged the gap between their very different worlds. The billionaire, who had once been consumed by business and status, felt a sense of peace he had never known. The maid, who had always kept her talent hidden, felt seen and appreciated in a way that was entirely new. By the end of the evening, they both knew that life in the mansion would never be the same. The walls, once silent and distant, now carried the memory of shared moments and music. The billionaire had discovered not only a hidden talent but also a new perspective on life, one that valued people, stories, and the beauty of everyday moments. And the maid had found someone who recognized her for who she truly was, not just for her role in the household. As the lights dimmed and the house settled into quiet for the night, the memory of that day lingered in both their minds. It was a beginning, a chance for something more than routine and duty. And in that quiet mansion, a connection had been forged, one that promised to bring unexpected joy, understanding, and perhaps even transformation for both of them. The next morning, the mansion seemed to hold a quiet anticipation, as if the walls themselves remembered the music from the previous day. The billionaire woke earlier than usual, feeling a restless excitement he had not experienced in years. His thoughts kept returning to the maid, to the way her fingers had moved over the piano keys, and to the warmth and emotion her music had carried. There was something magnetic about it, something that stirred a part of him that had long been dormant. He knew he could not ignore it. He wanted to see her play again, to hear more of the music that had left such an impression. He walked through the house quietly, hoping to find her in her usual morning routines. The staff moved about, noticing him with polite nods, but he hardly acknowledged them. His attention was entirely on her, on the possibility of witnessing her talent once more. The quiet of the mansion seemed to amplify his anticipation, every step echoing as he approached the familiar hallway leading to the piano room. When he reached the door, it was slightly ajar. He peeked in and felt a thrill of excitement. There she was, seated at the grand piano, her back straight, hands poised, her focus entirely on the keys. The moment felt almost sacred, as if he had stepped into a private world he had no right to enter, yet one that welcomed him silently. She began to play, the notes delicate at first, then gradually growing into a melody that filled the entire room, rich and expressive. It was as though each note carried a story, a secret she had kept hidden for so long. He could not take his eyes off her. She was a vision of concentration and grace, unaware of his presence. Her face softened as she played, her emotions reflected in every movement, her fingers dancing across the keys with a fluidity that seemed effortless. The music was unlike anything he had ever heard, a mix of joy and melancholy, hope and longing, all woven together with an artistry that took his breath away. As he stood there, he realized that her talent went far beyond mere skill. It was an expression of her soul, a language that spoke directly to the heart. He remembered all the years he had spent focused on business, on achievements and acquisitions, and felt a pang of regret for the beauty he had missed in everyday life. In that moment, he understood the power of noticing, of truly seeing people for who they were and appreciating the gifts they carried within them. The melody shifted, becoming more intense, almost as if she were telling a story through the keys. He felt as though he could hear her life, her struggles, her dreams, all reflected in the music. He was captivated, caught in a spell of admiration and wonder. Every chord resonated with a depth that left him speechless, and he realized he had never truly felt this way before. The world outside the mansion, with all its noise and distractions, seemed to vanish. There was only her and the music, a shared space that transcended status, wealth, and the ordinary rules of life. When the piece finally ended, the room was filled with silence, a soft echo of the last notes hanging in the air. She remained at the piano, hands hovering over the keys, unaware that he had been watching the entire time. He stepped forward, his voice breaking the quiet. "That was extraordinary," he said, his tone filled with awe. "I have never heard anything like it in my life." She turned to him, surprise and modesty mingling in her expression. Thank you," she said softly. "I just play when I can." I never thought anyone would notice. He shook his head, smiling. Noticing isn't enough. What you do is remarkable. It deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be appreciated. She looked down at her hands, hesitant, unsure how to respond. She had spent so many years blending into the background, quietly performing her duties without seeking recognition. And now here was someone seeing her, acknowledging her talent with sincerity and respect. For a moment she felt exposed, yet strangely validated. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, a mix of fear and pride. He moved closer, sitting on a nearby chair, his eyes never leaving hers. "Tell me more about this," he said. "When did you start playing? How did you learn all this?" She took a deep breath, her fingers brushing the keys reflexively. "I learned as a child," she began. "My parents didn't have money for lessons, so I practiced on a small keyboard at home. I loved the sound, the way it made me feel. It became my way of escaping, of expressing myself. When I came here, I didn't think anyone would care, so I kept it to myself." He listened intently, absorbing every word. Her story was simple, yet profound. It spoke of resilience, dedication, and the quiet pursuit of something beautiful despite circumstances. He realized that people often carry hidden worlds within them, talents and passions that remain unseen simply because no one takes the time to notice. And now, by chance, he had discovered one of those hidden worlds. "You have a gift," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "And gifts like yours should not be hidden. They are meant to inspire, to touch others, to bring joy. I want to help you share this, if you're willing." Her eyes widened, a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope reflecting in them. "Share it? I've never played for anyone outside the house. I don't know if I could." He smiled encouragingly. "You don't have to decide right now. But know that your talent is something special. I see it, and I believe it should have the chance to grow." They spoke for hours, exploring the possibilities of what her music could become, what her life could be beyond the walls of the mansion. She had always felt confined by her duties, by the expectations placed on her, and now she began to imagine a future where her music was valued, where she could pursue it freely. For the first time, someone had offered her support and belief. Without judgment, without expectation, only genuine recognition. As the day moved forward, he continued to observe her, not as a boss observing an employee, but as someone who had discovered a hidden treasure. Every movement, every note she played, became a revelation, a reminder that life often held surprises in the most unexpected places. He marveled at her ability to express herself so fully, to create beauty that transcended the ordinary routines of life. By late afternoon, they had established a rhythm of understanding and connection. She would play, and he would listen, offering encouragement and gentle guidance, never imposing, always appreciating. The mansion, which had often felt cold and impersonal, now seemed alive, resonating with music, emotion, and the possibility of change. Even the staff noticed the difference. There was a new energy in the house, a subtle shift that came from the acknowledgement of talent and the recognition of individuality. The billionaire himself felt transformed, realizing that his life had been missing something essential, the simple act of truly noticing and appreciating others. And the maid felt seen in a way she never had before, as if the world had finally caught up to her music, to the passion she had carried quietly for years. As evening fell, the two remained in the piano room, the last rays of sunlight casting a golden glow over the polished surfaces. She played one final piece for the day, a melody soft and introspective, as if reflecting the journey they had shared over the past hours. He listened silently, absorbing every note, every subtle nuance, feeling a deep sense of connection and understanding that went beyond words. When the music ended, they sat in silence for a long moment, both aware of the significance of what had occurred. It was not just about talent or recognition, but about discovery, trust, and the quiet joy of connecting with another human being in a meaningful way. The mansion, usually a place of structure and order, had become a space of creativity and possibility, a haven for talent waiting to be acknowledged. Finally he spoke, his voice soft but filled with sincerity. Thank you. Not just for the music, but for showing me something I had forgotten. The value of noticing, of appreciating the beauty in people and moments. She smiled, a small, shy smile that carried gratitude and a hint of pride. I never thought anyone would care, she said quietly. But now I feel like I can actually believe in what I do. And in that quiet, golden-lit room, surrounded by the echoes of her music, they both understood that something had changed. The day had begun like any other, but it had become extraordinary. A turning point that promised new beginnings, hidden possibilities, and the quiet magic of human connection. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, unspoken anticipation. The mansion, usually a place of strict schedules and formal routines, began to feel warmer, almost alive. The billionaire found himself arriving home with a sense of eagerness he had not experienced in years. Work, meetings, and decisions seemed less pressing, replaced by the desire to see her, to hear her play, and to connect with the world she had opened up to him. Every hallway, every polished floor seemed to echo with the memory of her music. She too felt a subtle change. Her mornings, which had once been predictable and methodical, now carried an undertone of excitement and nervous energy. She found herself thinking about the conversations they had shared, the encouragement he had offered, and the rare feeling of being seen and understood. Music had always been her refuge, a secret world she could escape into. But now it was a bridge, a connection to someone who truly noticed her and valued her talent. Their interactions became natural and fluid. He would walk into the piano room at different times of the day, sometimes quietly observing, sometimes engaging in conversation. They talked about music, of course, but also about life, dreams, and small moments of beauty that often went unnoticed. She learned that he had memories of music from his own past, moments of joy and longing that had been buried under years of business and responsibility. He learned about her struggles, her quiet perseverance, and the secret joy she found in every note she played. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the large windows, he watched her practice a new piece. Her hands moved with confidence now, every note deliberate yet infused with emotion. He noticed the slight furrow of concentration on her brow, the way her shoulders relaxed when a particularly difficult passage was mastered, and the quiet satisfaction in her expression when the melody flowed smoothly. He realized that talent alone was only part of the story. What made her extraordinary was her dedication, her love for the music, and the courage to express herself even when no one was watching. He began to ask her questions, not to test her knowledge, but to understand her perspective. "What does this piece mean to you?" he asked one day, leaning against the doorway. She paused, hands resting lightly on the keys. "It's like telling a story without words," she said. "Sometimes it's about happiness, sometimes sadness, but it's always about feeling something that I can't explain." He nodded, appreciating the depth of her answer. "I understand," he replied, "and it's remarkable. The way you can make others feel it even without words, it's a gift." Encouraged by his support, she began to experiment more, playing pieces she had never dared attempt before. She tried faster tempos, more complex harmonies, and even improvised little variations. Each time she played, he listened intently, providing gentle feedback, not as a critic, but as someone genuinely interested in helping her grow. Their conversations became a blend of mentorship and friendship, a balance of respect, encouragement, and trust. He began to notice subtle changes in himself as well. His life, once dominated by schedules and obligations, now contained moments of genuine wonder and reflection. Watching her play, listening to the nuances in her music, and sharing in the quiet joy of creativity reminded him of what had been missing for so long. He found himself smiling more easily, appreciating the small things in life, and feeling a renewed sense of connection to the people around him. One evening, as the sky turned a warm shade of pink and orange, he suggested they sit together after her practice. They moved a few chairs closer to the piano, the soft glow of the lamps casting a gentle light over the room. He asked her to play a piece that was particularly meaningful to her. She hesitated at first, then nodded, placing her fingers carefully on the keys. The music began softly, almost shyly, and then blossomed into a melody full of emotion, telling a story of hope, longing, and quiet triumph. He listened, completely absorbed. Every note resonated with a feeling he had not experienced in years. It was more than music. It was an expression of life itself. He realized that talent could not be measured solely by skill or technique. It was the ability to touch hearts, to evoke emotion, to make people feel something they had forgotten or never experienced before. And she had that power hidden for so long, now revealed in its full brilliance. After the piece ended, he remained silent for a moment, letting the last notes linger in the air. Then he spoke, his voice soft but filled with genuine admiration. "That was beautiful, truly beautiful. I feel like I've been given a gift by simply listening to you." She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise and a hint of disbelief. I never thought anyone would feel that way. I just play because it's part of me, part of who I am." He smiled, leaning back in his chair. "And that is exactly why it matters. It's not just about playing the right notes or being perfect. It's about sharing a piece of yourself, and you've done that in a way that's unforgettable." The connection between them deepened with each day. She began to trust him not only with her music but with her thoughts and feelings. He shared stories of his own life, moments of vulnerability that few had ever seen. Their conversations often drifted from music to life, to dreams, to the small, overlooked beauty of the world around them. It was a rare bond, built on mutual respect, admiration, and the simple joy of being seen for who they truly were. One afternoon, he suggested they explore a new approach. "I want you to try composing something of your own," he said. "Not just playing existing pieces, but creating something that's entirely you." She hesitated, unsure if she was ready, but his encouragement gave her the courage to try. She began to play, experimenting with melodies, harmonies, and rhythms that reflected her own experiences and emotions. At first it was awkward, full of pauses and uncertainties, but gradually the music began to flow. Each note carried a piece of her heart, a story that had been waiting to be told. He listened patiently, offering gentle suggestions, never pressuring, always encouraging. He could see the pride and joy growing in her as the composition took shape. She was discovering not only her own potential, but also the power of sharing it, of creating something that could touch others in ways she had never imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the mansion transformed along with them. The piano room became a place of creativity and growth, a sanctuary where talent, trust, and human connection flourished. The billionaire, once consumed by work and ambition, found joy in the simple act of witnessing her growth, feeling proud of the courage and artistry she displayed. She in turn found confidence and validation, a sense that her passion mattered and that her music could have a real impact. Their bond was quiet but profound. It was not built on grand gestures or dramatic moments, but on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the subtle understanding that they had discovered something rare and meaningful in each other. The mansion, once a place of solitude and routine, now resonated with music, laughter, and a new sense of life. Each day brought new melodies, new stories, and a deepening connection that neither had expected but both cherished. As the sun set one evening, casting a warm golden light across the piano room, they sat together, listening to the final notes of a piece she had composed that afternoon. He turned to her, his expression soft and sincere. "You've grown so much in such a short time. I never imagined that simply noticing someone could bring so much change. Not just for them, but for me as well." She smiled, a gentle and genuine smile, reflecting pride, gratitude, and a sense of belonging. "I never knew I could do all this," she said quietly. "I didn't think anyone would care, but you've made me believe in myself." And in that moment, in the soft glow of the piano room, surrounded by the echoes of her music and the shared understanding between them, they both knew that life in the mansion had changed forever. Talent had been discovered, trust had been built, and a connection had formed that promised growth, joy, and a future full of possibilities. The mansion, once a place of silence and routine, now held the warmth of shared moments, the beauty of creativity, and the quiet magic of human connection. The following morning, the mansion felt alive in a way it never had before. Sunlight poured into the grand piano room, reflecting off the polished floors in golden accents, as if the house itself acknowledged the change in its occupants. The billionaire arrived earlier than usual, feeling a mixture of anticipation and excitement that he had not experienced in years. His mind was not on work, investments, or schedules, but on her music, her talent, and the remarkable presence she had revealed in the past weeks. She was already at the piano, her posture straight, eyes focused on the keys, fingers poised for another morning of practice. Today felt different even to her. There was a quiet sense of possibility in the air, a feeling that something significant was about to happen. She had been working on a new composition, experimenting with melodies and rhythms she had never dared try before. The notes were tentative at first, cautious but soon grew bolder, more confident, as if the music itself encouraged her to reach further. He entered the room silently, watching her for a few moments. There was a soft concentration in her expression, a dedication that drew him in. He realized once again how much she had grown in such a short time. Her hands moved with precision, but there was now a fluidity and emotion in her playing that was unmistakably her own. He felt a swell of admiration, not only for her skill but for the courage and persistence that had brought her to this point. After she finished the piece, he clapped softly, careful not to startle her. "That was incredible," he said, his voice warm. "You've outdone yourself. The music is full of life, full of emotion. I can't help but feel that this is only the beginning." She looked up, a mixture of pride and nervousness on her face. "I'm not sure. I mean, I like it, but it's still just for me. I don't know if it's enough for anyone else." He shook his head gently. "It's more than enough. You have a gift that deserves to be shared. People should hear this, experience it. I want to help you do that if you're ready." Her eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and hope reflecting in them. She had never imagined that anyone would take her talent seriously beyond the walls of the mansion. The thought of performing, of being recognized, was both exciting and terrifying. But his sincerity, his unwavering belief in her, gave her courage she had never known she possessed. Over the next few days, they discussed possibilities. Could she receive formal training? Perhaps perform for an audience? Even recording her music for others to hear? Each idea seemed both thrilling and overwhelming. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to step into a world she had only dreamed of. But his encouragement was patient, never forceful, always supportive. He reminded her that talent like hers was rare and precious, and that the world deserved to witness it. One afternoon, he presented her with an unexpected opportunity. A friend of his, a music producer, was hosting a small gathering of artists and musicians, and he suggested she perform. The thought made her heart race. Performing for strangers, for people she had never met, felt like stepping into a completely new world. She hesitated, doubt and fear mingling with excitement, unsure if she was ready. But he smiled reassuringly, saying, "You don't have to decide now. Take your time. Just know that the chance is here when you feel ready." She continued to practice, pouring her emotions and experiences into each piece. Her confidence grew with every session. She experimented with new melodies, refined old ones, and began composing original pieces that reflected her own story. The piano room, once a place of quiet routine, now resonated with creativity and growth. The mansion itself seemed to embrace this change, the air filled with music, possibility, and anticipation. The billionaire watched her transformation with a sense of awe. He had not only discovered a hidden talent, but had witnessed its evolution. She was no longer the quiet, unnoticed maid he had first encountered. She had become an artist, a creator, someone whose music could touch hearts and evoke emotions that words alone could not. He felt a sense of pride and admiration, but also a profound respect for her dedication, humility, and courage. As the day of the gathering approached, she began to feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Performing for an audience was a completely different experience than playing for him or for herself. She worried about mistakes, about judgment, about failing to meet expectations. He noticed her anxiety and offered gentle encouragement. "Remember," he said, "this is not about perfection. It's about sharing your music, your story. People will connect with that, not with whether every note is flawless." On the day of the performance, the mansion buzzed with a quiet energy. She prepared carefully, choosing a piece that felt personal, one that carried the emotion she had experienced throughout her life and her journey of discovery. He remained by her side, offering reassurance and support, silently conveying his belief in her talent. The world outside, the audience she would face, felt distant compared to the trust and connection they had built together. When it was time to perform, she approached the piano, hands trembling slightly but heart steady. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, and then began to play. The melody was soft at first, almost hesitant, but it soon grew in confidence and beauty. Each note carried a part of her soul, a story of resilience, hope, and courage. The audience, initially quiet and attentive, soon became absorbed in the music, drawn into the emotions she poured into every chord. The billionaire watched silently, a smile of quiet pride on his face. He had witnessed countless achievements in his life, yet nothing had moved him as profoundly as this moment. It was not the grandeur or the applause that mattered, but the authenticity, the raw emotion, the courage it took to share oneself so openly. He realized that true talent was not measured by skill alone, but by the ability to touch others, to evoke feelings, and to create a connection that transcended words. As the final notes lingered in the room, the audience erupted into applause, but it was the silent moments between the music and the sound of hands clapping that held the most meaning. She looked up, eyes shining with tears of relief and joy, and found him smiling at her, proud and supportive. The validation, the recognition, and the experience of sharing her music with others was overwhelming yet exhilarating. She had stepped into a new world, and it felt as though she had finally found her place. After the performance, people approached her, praising her talent, asking questions about her training, expressing their admiration. She answered humbly, still in disbelief at the response, but each word reinforced her growing confidence. She realized that her music had the power to move people, to make them feel, to connect in ways she had never imagined. The journey from private practice in the quiet mansion to performing for a real audience had transformed her, not just as a musician, but as a person. The billionaire standing beside her felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known. He had not only discovered her talent but had nurtured it, witnessed its growth, and supported her in stepping into a larger world. He understood that true success was not only in personal achievements or wealth, but in helping others realize their potential, in being present for moments of transformation, and in valuing human connection above all else. That evening, as they returned to the mansion, the music still resonating in her heart, they walked together through the familiar halls, now filled with the warmth of accomplishment and shared experience. The piano room, once a place of solitude, now symbolized opportunity, growth, and the power of encouragement. She had taken a leap of faith, embraced her talent, and discovered that the world was larger and more welcoming than she had ever imagined. Over the next few days, they reflected on the performance, discussing what she had learned, how she felt, and what she wanted to pursue next. Each conversation was a blend of mentorship, friendship, and mutual respect. He offered guidance not as a boss, but as someone who truly believed in her abilities. She shared her thoughts and dreams openly, feeling safe and supported in a way that encouraged further growth. Together, they explored the next steps for her music, discussing possibilities of formal training, recording sessions, and future performances. The mansion became a space of creativity and opportunity, a place where talent could be nurtured and dreams could take shape. The bond they had formed through music, trust, and shared experience continued to deepen, each day reinforcing the power of recognition, encouragement, and human connection. As the sun set over the mansion, casting long shadows and golden light through the windows, they sat together in the piano room, reflecting on the journey so far. She placed her fingers lightly on the keys, playing a soft, introspective melody that carried the emotions of the past weeks: excitement, fear, growth, and triumph. He listened, fully present, appreciating not just the music but the courage and heart behind it. In that quiet, glowing room, surrounded by the echoes of her talent and their shared experiences, they both understood that this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. The morning after her first performance, the mansion felt quiet yet alive, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the energy of the night before. The billionaire walked through the halls, a gentle smile on his face. He felt a mix of pride and wonder, reflecting on the journey that had led them here. Her music had not only filled the rooms but had changed the atmosphere of the entire house. He realized that discovering her talent had transformed more than her life. It had awakened something within him as well. She was in the piano room already as usual, practicing. But today there was a difference. She played with a confidence and freedom he had never seen before. Her fingers moved with ease, her expressions reflecting the pride and joy she felt inside. Each note told a story, and it was clear that she had grown, not just as a musician but as a person who now believed in herself and her abilities. He approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her flow. Yet as he watched, he couldn't help but feel moved. The transformation he saw in her was remarkable. She had begun as a quiet, almost invisible presence in the mansion, and now she was a radiant force of creativity and expression. The music she played seemed to reflect every moment of her journey, the struggles, the quiet persistence, the courage to share herself with the world, and the joy of being recognized. After she finished playing, he applauded softly. "That was beautiful," he said. "More than beautiful. It's incredible to see how far you've come. You've not only grown in skill but in confidence and heart. You found your voice and it's extraordinary." She looked up, her cheeks slightly flushed, a gentle smile forming on her lips. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I never imagined anyone would see me like this or believe in me the way you have." He shook his head gently. "It's not just belief. It's recognition. You have a rare gift and it deserves to be nurtured and shared. I feel lucky to have witnessed it from the beginning." Over the following weeks, she continued to practice, compose, and even experiment with new styles of music. He encouraged her to explore her boundaries, to create pieces that reflected not only her experiences but her imagination. The mansion became a haven for creativity. The piano room was no longer just a private sanctuary. It had become a place where ideas could flourish, where music and life intertwined in ways neither of them had anticipated. He also began to introduce her to small opportunities beyond the mansion, invitations to local music gatherings, private sessions with other musicians, and even informal recording opportunities came their way. At first, she felt nervous, unsure if she could perform outside the familiar walls of the house. But his support never wavered. He reminded her that her music was her voice and that sharing it could inspire others, just as it had inspired him. With each experience, her confidence grew. She began to understand that her music had a reach far beyond the quiet corners of the mansion. People responded to the emotions and stories in her playing, and she discovered the profound satisfaction that came from touching lives through art. She was learning not just to perform, but to connect, to convey something universal through the language of music. One afternoon, as they reviewed some of her compositions, he suggested something unexpected. "You have enough material now," he said. "I think it's time to record an album, something that captures your journey, your emotions, and your voice. The world deserves to hear it." She hesitated, overwhelmed by the thought. Recording an album felt like stepping into an entirely new world, far beyond what she had imagined. But he smiled gently. "I'll be here every step of the way. You don't have to do it alone." The process was challenging but exhilarating. She spent hours refining her pieces, experimenting with sound and exploring the nuances of her performance. He offered guidance and encouragement, not as a boss, but as someone who had become a mentor, a supporter, and a trusted friend. Each recording session became a journey of discovery, both of her musical abilities and of her courage to share herself openly. Through this process, their bond grew stronger. They had come to rely on each other in subtle ways. He had learned patience, empathy, and the joy of nurturing talent. She had learned confidence, resilience, and the value of having someone believe in her unconditionally. The mansion, which had once been a symbol of solitude and routine, now stood as a place of transformation, a testament to the power of discovery, encouragement, and human connection. The album, when finally completed, was a reflection of her life, her journey, and the evolution of her talent. Each track carried emotion, storytelling, and authenticity. When the first playbacks were shared with a small audience, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People were moved, inspired, and captivated by the depth of her music. She realized that her fears had been misplaced. Her music resonated because it was real, honest, and heartfelt. The billionaire watched her success with a quiet pride. He had always valued achievements, but witnessing someone grow, embrace their gift, and share it with the world brought a deeper sense of fulfillment. He understood that true richness lay not in wealth alone, but in moments of human connection, in the discovery and nurturing of talent, and in helping someone step into their own light. One evening, after a long day of recording, they sat together in the piano room, reflecting on the journey. The soft glow of the lamps cast warm light over the polished surfaces, and the room felt like a sanctuary once more. She played a simple, gentle melody, letting the music flow naturally without concern for perfection. It was a melody that spoke of gratitude, growth, and new beginnings. He listened, feeling a profound sense of peace. "Look at how far you've come," he said softly. "From those first quiet notes in this room to sharing your music with the world. You've done something remarkable, not just for yourself, but for everyone who hears you." She smiled, a mix of pride and humility. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You saw something in me I didn't even see myself. You believed in me, and it made all the difference." He shook his head, smiling gently. "I didn't give you anything you didn't already have. I only helped you realize it. That's the beauty of it. The talent was always yours. You just needed someone to notice and support it." As the evening progressed, they continued to play, experiment, and share ideas. The mansion, once quiet and predictable, now resonated with creativity, life, and possibility. Their journey together had transformed both their lives, showing that discovery, trust, and encouragement could create extraordinary outcomes. The music, the bond, and the growth were reminders that life's true richness lay not in wealth or status, but in the relationships and talents we nurture and celebrate. In the weeks that followed, she began to receive more opportunities, invitations to perform, chances to collaborate with other artists, and requests to share her story. Each experience reinforced her confidence and solidified her belief in herself. She had stepped out of the shadows and into the light, and with each note she played, she carried the story of her journey, inspiring others along the way. The billionaire, meanwhile, found a renewed perspective on life. He had learned to notice, to appreciate, and to invest in human potential, rather than just financial gain. He realized that true impact came from supporting others, recognizing hidden talent, and helping someone achieve what they never thought possible. Their shared journey had opened his eyes to the profound value of human connection and the beauty of discovering hidden strengths. Months later, as she prepared for a significant performance at a well-known venue, she felt a mixture of excitement and calm confidence. She reflected on the path she had taken, the quiet beginnings in the piano room, the guidance and encouragement she had received, the courage to perform, and the growth that had followed. Every step had led to this moment, a culmination of talent, determination, and the support of someone who had believed in her from the start. The performance was a success, moving the audience deeply. People were captivated by her music, the authenticity and emotion shining through each note. She realized that her journey was not just about skill or recognition, but about the power of believing in oneself and the transformative effect of support and encouragement. She had found her voice, shared it with the world, and discovered that her music could touch hearts and inspire others. After the performance, as she returned to the mansion, the billionaire greeted her with a warm smile. "You've done it," he said simply. "You've shared your gift and the world has responded. I couldn't be prouder." She looked at him, eyes shining with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You helped me believe, and that made all the difference." He shook his head, smiling. "You believed in yourself all along. I just helped you see it." And in that moment, in the quiet of the mansion, surrounded by the echoes of her music and the shared memories of their journey, they both understood the true meaning of discovery, growth, and human connection. The music had brought them together, but it was the trust, encouragement, and belief in each other that had transformed their lives forever. The mansion, once a place of solitude and routine, now held the warmth of shared success, the joy of talent realized, and the promise of many more melodies yet to come.